Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. We are here once again the morning after the night before, and Aston Villa have beaten AFC Barrow 6-0 in the Carabao Cup. But first of all, Dan, the dust settled on all that. We'll get into that in just a short moment. But how are you doing, my friend?
I'm not too bad, mate. How are you?
I'm doing good, mate. We move. We gotta get these podcasts out for you guys, and it's probably going to be a bit of a short episode today. I think we all saw what happened last night at Barrow. Fair play to the sort of 650 fans that travelled up as well. If you had the away history for that, you are elite, and nobody can question your commitment or desire to support this wonderful football club. And what really impressed me, well, first of all, Dan, we'll talk about shocks. No Wesley. It seems as if afterwards, Greg Evans has said he will be going back out on loan to Club Bruges, a place where he spent a bit of time, obviously where we bought him from. I was gutted not to see Wes in action because, got to be honest, Carabao Cup, I think that's where Wes is going to get his minutes in. But before we get into the game, Dan, a loan period for Wes. This is the Wesley Filler podcast. We will be watching Club Bruges games over the next sort of 12 months, seeing how this man gets on. This is probably a really important bit of business, especially given the fact that, Cameron Archer, to sort of address the elephant in the room, got a hattie last night. Wes needs to play regular football, and Aston Villa right now isn't the place where he's going to get it.
No, absolutely, mate. I felt like it was confirmed as soon as we saw the lineup, right?
Yeah.
So as soon as you see he's not in there, it's like, right, okay, well, there's something going on. That means he's going. There's, it will be. It felt like in terms of getting some potential more business done this window. It's like depending on the outs, and Wesley was always one of the names on the chopping block, really. And so I think it was difficult to think of potential suitors for Wesley, but going back to Bruges and, for that loan, which is probably more for them than us. I don't think we're loaning Wesley out with the idea that one day he'll come back to Villa. I think it's more Club Bruges taking him on a sort of trial period, considering his injury and the fact that he has played little or no football, to be honest, for you in what feels like an age now, doesn't it? Really, since we last saw Wes playing consistently. So I think it's probably more on their part that they'd like the loan just to sort of test that out. But no, I wish the big man all the best of luck, and I'm sure that he will find his feet once again. I just don't think it will be with Villa, unfortunately.
Speaking about finding their feet, Dan, Ghazi last night, shushing Barrow fans, scoring Panenkas. This man seems to be back at his best, and I felt for Barrow a bit because I think Anwar was showboating a bit last night, just in general. One of them games he needed for the confidence, especially after scoring the penalty the other day. 100% penalty record for Aston Villa. Believe before he hadn't joined the club, he'd never taken a penalty outside of a shootout that he'd been involved in. So to have a record like that is absolutely remarkable. And it was a bit cringe seeing Anwar mocking it, but seeing him back in form, it was a real professional performance overall as well, Dan, with a few other sort of senior players making sort of setting the example for the younger lads. It was good to see Anwar getting in amongst the goals, wasn't it, mate?
Yeah, no, it was, mate. It reminded me so much of Carlos Vinicius against Marine.
Yeah.
Do you remember that game for Tottenham where he sort of gave it there and stood there, and I was like, so what did he do? Like, oh, Anwar, no, there's no need. But that is the nature of the beast, isn't it? That's Anwar in a nutshell. I'm surprised that he didn't get rinsed as much as I thought he was going to. As soon as I saw him, the Panenka, I was like, okay, that's like a bit cheeky, Anwar. And then to shush the Barrow fans after scoring, I was like, oh, I'm going to go on Twitter, and there are going to be accounts set up to bring this man's head on a spike to the gates of the city of Barrow, the town of Barrow. It's like they will, and I was surprised that there wasn't too much of it. But that is Anwar Ghazi in a nutshell, isn't it? That the man lives for impersonate Ronaldo in every way he can. Whether Ronaldo would shush Barrow fans, though, I don't know. But if he comes to City, then maybe we'll get a chance to see him play in those kind of FA Cup games. And then both us and Anwar will know for sure. But it's good that Anwar is a confidence player, isn't he, mate? He's a player that once he gets a few goals under his belt, you see him play so differently in matches to like beforehand. And so I think, whilst yes, it is stat padding just a little bit, it's good to see him get these goals because it means that going into the next few games when we haven't got Traore and we haven't got Bailey just yet, it means that we can have El Ghazi at his best. And if it means that he's got a shit house and Barrow fans to get there, then so be it.
Is he booing Villa fans though? Sorry, is he shushing Villa fans? Is that what he's doing as well? Maybe, I don't know. I think there was a lot of talk after
Yeah.
Watford. People sort of saying we'll ship him off himself. I think Watford. He was clearly playing on the wrong side. Didn't have the best game against Newcastle, but got the penalty. Hopefully, we're seeing the best of Anwar, but someone who naturally caught all the headlines down, who really impressed. A player who I know is a hero in your Solihull Moors Football Manager save of last season, Cameron Archer, Dan. A hat-trick last night. I almost said tonight. That's how tired I am. It feels like it's tonight still. A hat-trick last night. Only managed 4 in 28 for Solihull Moors last season, which is kind of not an indictment on him or his ability whatsoever. More the fact, the lad took every single chance he got against Barrow with much better service. At 19 years old, Dan, this is a really exciting prospect. And for a while now, it's very much felt like, oh, okay, it's Louis Barry. Oh, okay, it's Brad Young. Oh, okay, it's Carney Chukwuemeka. Okay, it's but it's Aaron or Jacob Ramsey. Take your pick. But now, there's so many, wonderfully talented players. And Archer was unfortunate enough to be too old to feature in the FA Youth Cup, else we would have probably seen him a bit more. Obviously prior to the loan to Solihull. But I mean, to get 3 in the manner he did, all of the goals, wonderful as well. Really clinical finishes, and to see that from such a young age, and the composure and the technique he displayed, especially in the little chip where he sat the keeper down. I mean, what a striker! And again, sort of this is the Wesley Filler podcast. Sorry to bring it back to Wes, but when you've got players like this waiting in the wing, it's unfair not to give them the opportunities, Dan, isn't it?
You have to. It's as simple as that. I think Cameron Archer was when we saw the lineup. It was like, oh yeah, wow, Cameron Archer, because you thought that this kind of game would see Brad Young, maybe, or obviously Louis Barry's gone out on loan. But those lads that lit up the youth cup playing in those forward areas, it looked like it was a game for them. And because of Cameron's loan to Solihull, he's sort of gone off the radar a little bit, because it wasn't the most successful period for him, as you were saying. But he became the first Villa player to score a hat-trick in his first start since 1927, and he's only the second youngest ever player to score a hat-trick for Villa. The great Gary Shaw actually scored a hat-trick when he was just 18 back in 1979. So these are quite historic numbers from young Cameron there, and it's really exciting to see just what he's about, because, as you said, our academy's become really high profile, hasn't it, in recent years amongst Villa fans. We pay a lot more attention to what's going on just because we're actually excited for once about the players that are coming through it. And so it's nice to see more of Cameron, a player that, as I said, we haven't seen too much of, and hopefully we get to see some more of him, because I don't think if Wesley had played in that game, he may have, but given the little amount of football that he's been playing, as I said further on, there's no guarantee he would have scored, let alone scored a hat-trick. So that door is now open, and I'm really excited to see exactly who starts to feature on the bench and stuff like that. But Cam's certainly staked a claim.
So it's a good problem to have, isn't it? And again, we love Wes, we love Keenan for the podcast as well. But when you've got young lads like this waiting in the wing, you can't help but feel like the days are numbered for the likes of Wes and Big Keenan. Plenty of positives again, throughout the game, Dan. Not only the score, I think, first of all, Villa dealt well with on an evening where I think all Barrow did was just look to frustrate. They had 1 or 2 chances, and probably should have had a penalty. We're not going to delve too much into the sort of analysis in this game. However, players who certainly impressed me. We saw Aaron Ramsey come on, Carney Chukwuemeka, proving that he can operate in a bit of a deeper role as well, which was very interesting to see for me. Philogene Badace, this kid's worth his weight in gold. He's getting minutes as well in the Premier League, albeit few and far between. But we're going to see more of him. And that assist for Archer's hat-trick was just wonderful. He had no other option but to make that pass. And, it was honestly just sublime. And, the sort of cherry on the icing on top of the cake. Always great to win 6-0, but, it doesn't quite feel the same when it's, against, with no disrespect at all intended to sort of lower division side. It kind of felt almost inevitable. Again, no disrespect to Barrow, but these are games you want to see Villa comfortably win. Caleb Chukwuemeka as well. This guy, and again, sorry to bring Wesley back into the conversation, but first of all, the shoulders on this lad, Jesus Christ. Second of all, if you're looking for a striker who seems to be able to hold the ball up, again, Caleb, he seems like your guy. Great bit of business bringing him in. Hopefully, keep Kai happy as well at the club. But yeah, we saw a few. Hayden Lindley came on at right backs, slotted in for Freddie G. Really nice to see that. I believe he plays as more of a holding midfielder. So to be thrust in a position he's not as familiar with, and look all right. That's really good. Just on Freddie G, Dan, before we sort of wrap up the Barrow talk. Really solid performance. Played some really nice balls in. Obviously scored the goal with his weak foot. Couldn't help but feel like he just doesn't want to be here though, Dan. Really, this guy deserves to be playing regular football, and I just don't think he's happy. He's content being second choice, and it doesn't really seem like, in Smith's eyes at least, that Freddie G can really push Matty Cash and sort of break into that first team.
I mean, the thing is with Fred is that he had that taste, didn't he, of first team football, and it wasn't even, it was at Strasbourg. It wasn't, a massive club, but you could just, he's definitely good enough to be going and playing like that, and I think it meant a lot to him to finally get out the shadow of Matty Cash and go back to his home country and play really well in a league which he's far more familiar with, in a country, in a club he's far more familiar with. And I think, you sort of, these cup games, I love them for one. I love the early rounds of the cup. I think it's great. But I always do fear that there must be a really awkward moment for Dean when he walks into Bodymore and says, okay, Tyrone, Emmy, these guys, you can stay at home, don't worry traveling, but you and you. You're going to come with us to Barrow, and it must feel a little bit like you're not quite in that upper tier. Do you know what I mean? You're sort of the outcasts, and I think when you see Emmy was putting up stories from his home and stuff like that, and you're having to travel with, no disrespect to the kids because they're wonderfully talented, but you're having to travel with the kids to go and play Barrow, and it's hard. Do you know what I'm trying to say, mate? It's like, it's one of those where it can potentially get a little scenario. No, and I think for Fred, he must have been thinking, look, I'm playing first team football in Liga 1, which is, like, say it quietly, Dan, but one of the better leagues in Europe this year. He was playing first, and now he's here playing at this 6,000 seater stadium or whatever it is, alongside a bunch of 19-year-olds, and so Villa fans have a lot of love for Fred, and I think it's very well deserved. He was one of the shining lights in our first season back in the Premier League, and he's just one of those players where I think all Villa fans would wish him well as he left, and with no grudges against him, because he's too good to be playing second fiddle. He doesn't want to play second fiddle. I don't really want to force him to the bench either. So I think the quicker we get that move sorted, the better for all parties.
Yeah, I think next season, especially seeing how successful Kane Kessler's loan move to Swindon has already been, he's the backup right back next season. That is just how it goes. I think, with the sort of vision of the owners and with Dean of promoting the youth, Kane Kessler is the backup right back to push Matty Cash next season. And whether he does manage to get minutes or not next season, that's sort of up in the air. But regardless of that, he's going to be more happier sitting on the bench than Freddie G is at the moment. So I think, that there is that to consider. But less of that, Dan. Very good win. hoping for an interesting draw in the next round. However, Dan, we are caveating this with a bit of a transfer rumor. We've got a player to talk about. There was two, but it seems as if Thomas Delaney is off to Sevilla, which is unfortunate. Thankfully, I didn't prepare any notes on him. So, Dan, I can only apologise in advance if you had any on Delaney. I was going to go free balling with it. But here we are. Weston McKennie is becoming a bit of a ritual on this channel. You know, I wrote that article, I think it was last summer now, about how Weston McKennie is absolutely, unequivocally the answer to all of Aston Villa's midfield problems. As much as this guy, you know, he, for whatever reason, Allegri isn't convinced. There have been discussions. Juventus are reportedly willing to sell for around the region of 25 to 30 million euros. And there are a few clubs in the United Kingdom interested. I believe I read somewhere today that Crystal Palace are, but that seems like an absolute shot in the dark. There was reported interest from Spurs, but no action from them. And Villa are another club that have been linked with this move. Now, Dan, again, to kind of hark back to that article I wrote, he was one of the players who I name dropped on the podcast last summer, saying I really hope we sign this guy. There was no solid links really at the time, but you know, we're in a position right now where I think Villa are just looking to stockpile all of the sort of promising number 8s in Europe. Like, I don't really see who fits in where if Villa go for Weston McKennie, Dan.
No, it's one of those where you're right. We have been speaking about this guy for a long time, and what is most confusing about this rumor is that he did really well in his first season at Juve. You know, 35. You know, in the league alone, 34 games. Sorry, 5 goals, 2 assists, so 7 goal contributions. Really quite respectable for an American kid who's played, you know, just a few seasons of Bundesliga before going to a club like. I mean, Juventus felt like a surprising move at the time, didn't it? Because you felt like there would be a sort of intermediary club, like someone like, you know, us or something like that, like these sort of mid-table Premier League clubs like Palace, you said, were interested. And before he got that big move, which he's always been destined for. But Juve felt like an odd one because it was like, okay, no one was expecting him to go straight to the top that quickly. But he stuck and he proved that he could do well there. And look, I know they've had the change of manager. It was Pirlo that he was playing under, and it's now Allegri. But it felt like you'd see Aaron Ramsey on the chopping block before you saw Weston go for Juve. Yeah. And so it's an interesting move. But, you know, whoever picks him up is going to get a serious player. I think with Ndombele seemingly so out of favour at Spurs, that wouldn't surprise me if you saw a swap going on there, because I think he'd fit in really nicely in Italian football. But hey, I mean, one man's trash is another man's come up. That's what they say, mate. And if Spurs pass on him, it feels like it's a lot of business to get done in quite a short period of time. But my God, I think he'd fit our midfield nicely.
I think he would, but you know, we signed Morgan Sanson. Carney Chukwuemeka is going to play in this position. Whether people like it or not, John McGinn is improving and is a clear favourite of Dean's, so we'll be operating in that number 8 position as well. I think, you know, again, you know, Sky sort of got this confused with the lineup graphic last night. Villa are playing 4-3-3. We're back to 4-3-3. 1 sitting midfielder, 2 8s. That is what is getting the best out of this bunch of players, especially as you kind of alluded to earlier. When you have so many box-to-box midfielders, you have to play that way. And Jacobs, as we spoke about in the last podcast, Dan, being moulded into that number 8 sort of position. Morgan, again, you know, to bring him up, I don't really understand. I feel like if Villa are going for Weston McKennie, it's a sort of, we need to get this guy while we can. You know, 25 million euros seems like an absolute snippet for the player. You know, you and I clearly know Weston McKennie is capable of being done in the future. It seems like, you know, maybe we're just trying to get this one done over the line. But, you know, I don't really see where he fits in. However, that will not stop us from talking about the stats, as you know. We absolutely love to do. Weston McKennie, he scored in the Champions League last season against Barcelona as well, which I think people forget in what was, you know, quite an entertaining game. If you don't know who Weston is, he's, before he joined Juventus, obviously, as Dan mentioned, was at Schalke, and this box-to-box midfielder, kind of one of the golden boys of the US men's national team, a really solid group of players that are coming through there, Dan. And Weston is kind of at the heart of that. And I've seen a fair bit of content recently, sort of behind the scenes, about the kind of character that Weston is and how he sort of commands the attention of everybody in the room, and how he's so, he kind of thrives off that. And I feel like at a club like Villa, where I'm absolutely not saying he would be the main man whatsoever, but a player who gives a lot gets a lot at Villa, and we've seen that with John McGinn, with Joe Grealish, with other players like that. If you put your all into it, then regardless of whether you're good or bad, I think you will sort of be remembered and adored by the Villa fans. And I think in that sense, it feels like a match made in heaven. But what excites me about Weston, just as a player overall, it almost feels like, Dan, there aren't too many box-to-box midfielders currently operating right now, specifically ones that are actually, available for purchase. I feel like it's given how football has kind of changed into this sort of pressing game, stuff like that. You're not getting your sort of old school Stevie G style, Frank Lampard. You don't really come across them players very often. And Weston has the same ceiling as these players that we're talking about right now, Dan. What excites me, again, averaging 4.28 touches in the attacking penalty area per 90, which puts him within the top 1 percentile of that stat. He's receiving 6.67 progressive passes per 90, top 2 percentile for midfielders in that respective statistic as well. So on the half turn, he's always looking to bring the team forward, which excites me as well. But however, he's kind of up there with the tackles and the blocks. He's averaging 2.39 tackles per 90, Dan, 1.07 interceptions per 90 as well, 1.45 blocks, all really impressive stats that you want to see from your midfielder. And, with goals in big moments on the biggest stage, it just feels like McKennie is destined for greatness.
Oh, for sure. For sure. A lot of that current USA crop are, and more importantly, a lot of the lads that come through the academy at FC Dallas are, they've had a really, really credible setup there over in Texas. He's a player that plays with a real tenacity, which I don't feel like American players have been associated with in the past. I feel like people think that American players are a little bit soft and that they don't really sort of have that physicality and grit that you get with sort of English players and other European ones. But Weston has that. Weston has a real bite and a real tenacity. And I feel like we saw that at Juve because he had to prove himself. I think he knew that a lot of people were surprised, and he played with this grit and determination that I really, really endeared me to him. And I think that wherever he goes, as I said he'll be a success. I don't really feel like he's good enough for you to sculpt a team around, and that's where you get the best out of him. And that's why I think stepping down a tier will be a good move for him, because he's a small fish in a big pond at Juve, but he's a player that's just waiting to have a breakthrough. If the spotlight is on him, he can really do great things, as you say, mate. Like, his ceiling is so high. And I think making that step down to a club where he can be that, take on that main man tag and maybe pick up an armband or something like that would be a really, really good move for him. I think it's what he needs at this stage of the career, just as, whether he can shoulder that responsibility. That's the final thing. That's all that he hasn't proved, because it was very difficult for him at Schalke in a declining side to sort of shoulder that and put it on his back, because you could have put anyone in that team and Schalke were doomed. Juve, as I said, comes in. There's so many bigger names than him in that position. So making this move is certainly the right time for Weston, and hopefully we can see it with Villa. But as you say, mate, it's an interesting rumor. It's one that I think we've got like a week now until the window shuts at the time of recording. So be a lot of business to get done in a very short space of time. So don't have my hopes up just yet, but very exciting nonetheless, mate.
Absolutely. I felt, of course, if this deal gets done, going to be absolutely gassed. Just don't really see how or where he's going to fit in. But that is a discussion that you guys can have in the comments. Again, we'd just like to thank you guys for all the support on the channel recently. It's been pretty mad. The channel is continuing to grow at a rate. You guys are loving the podcasts at the moment, which truly does mean the world to both Dan and I, to see you guys enjoying them as much as you are. Honestly, it nothing's better than that. Nothing's better than that. So we hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. If you did, hit a like, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe for more content. Up the Villa.